Hi guys, and welcome to a special Racing TV Q&A. Emails, all sorts of social network questions have come in for Charlie Johnston, who from Midland is kindly on hand to answer the majority of the questions that have come in. Charlie, first up, obviously a trying time for racing, for sport, but it transcends that, of course. How's everything going?
Yeah, in some ways you almost feel guilty a bit at the moment in that our day-to-day life hasn't really changed a huge amount. We are continuing with as near to business as usual as we can. And, as we've sort of said a few times in recent weeks, this is not a business that we can press pause on. We can't shut the doors and walk away for 3 weeks. They still need fed, they still need exercised. And yeah, like I say, we've been continuing with as near to business as usual as we can. And that's important for the horses, but also for our owners and our staff, and trying to have a team that's ready for as soon as racing resumes.
Yeah, absolutely right. How do you feel about answering a few questions? You put the video out and they've come in.
Yeah, well, the first worry was that there'd be no questions, so at least we've covered that. But now trying to answer them will be the next challenge, but we'll see what we can do.
Right, we'll go straight in and pretty much continuing what you said at the beginning. Jamie Salmon has said, "Hi Charlie, what are you doing at the moment to keep everything going during this particularly difficult period?" Obviously, an extension of what you said earlier.
Yeah, in terms of the workload for the horses, that hasn't changed a huge amount, in all honesty. The older horses would still be ticking over, most of them cantering 5 or 6 days a week, but they wouldn't be doing any fast work until we have some targets in mind, basically, until we know when racing is going to resume and in what form that's going to take. There's no point really doing a lot of fast work with the older horses with nothing to work towards.
Sure.
With the 2-year-olds, even in a normal year, less than 10% of our 2-year-olds would have run by now anyway. So they still need to all do the same educational steps this year as they would in any other year. All the gallops on the all-weather, on the grass, the stalls work, all those sort of educational steps that they need before running, we're still doing with them. So in particular, the 2-year-olds, it's very much continuing as we would in any other normal year.
Sure.
In terms of coronavirus-related things, we've had to make a few adjustments just into how the daily routine of the yard works. Things like our staff canteen, now no longer can they go in there to have breakfast and lunch, but we're doing takeaway rolls for them at breakfast and at lunch. The tack room, rather than having the boards in the tack room where the list is and where it says what horses everyone's riding each lot, that gets typed up, printed off, and then pinned up outside on the wall around the yard, so that people can see what they're riding each lot without going to the tack room. So just, we're very fortunate in our industry that 95% of our morning is spent outdoors anyway. It's just trying to minimise as much as we can the time when people are in any enclosed spaces, basically.
Okay. Sarah Garner, she's got a few questions. Charlie, we've stayed in Midland and enjoyed watching the horses come through the village onto the moor and onto the gallops. I know the horses are continuing to work. How does this work during lockdown? Obviously, the social distancing between people, groups, yards. So kind of what you said there. And I suppose, once they get out into the gallops and out in the open, there's more fresh air, more open space. It's easier to keep apart.
Yeah, we are obviously a slight advantage to a lot of trainers in that we have our own private gallops, our own private site at Kingsley Park. So in terms of the work that the horses are doing, we're not having to share gallops with other strings, with other yards. About 60% of our horses live at Kingsley Park, so they are completely self-contained in that environment. The other 40% live in the village, and they have to go up through the village to get to Kingsley Park to use the gallops. But I think all the strings in Midland, I think, as is the same in wider society, everyone realises the situation that we're in. Everyone's working together, whether it be riding past the different string in the road in Midland, or whether it's queuing to get into Tesco's. You know, everyone's quite aware of what needs to be done and how we need to behave.
Sure.
And on the whole, things are running very smoothly.
Right, same source from Sarah again, and you're going to know this one's coming. Your mum and Angus are enjoying
Yeah.
are enjoying sing-alongs during the stay-at-home period. What talents do you have, and are you going to be joining them in a bit of a sing-song as well?
Yeah, there's been lots and lots of requests for some backing vocals from me and Dad. Safe to say that will not be happening anytime soon. The videos will not get 500 likes and 20,000 views if we're involved. They might end up on YouTube framed if we get involved. But yeah, in that half.
And have you got a particular talent? If Angus is the singer, what would you be?
Oh, I don't know. No, I'm fairly untalented all round, I would say. Just yeah, stick to training horses. That's about it.
That will do. And actually, that leads us on pretty nicely. Niall Birmingham has said, Charlie, I presume you will follow in your father's footsteps, either as a vet or as a trainer. But if you had to choose a different career, what would that be?
I'm not sure. I've sort of been on this path for a very long time, really, since day one, as much as anything. I obviously went to Glasgow and did a veterinary degree there before coming back home to work at home. I guess at a sort of A-level school age, I did maths and further maths at A-level. Quite mathematically minded, and something in the city trading would have been quite attractive at that age if I hadn't gone down the route that I was going to. But I think, yeah, you know, Dad tells all the stories about learning to read off the back of the racing post and those sort of things. So, I think there's always only really been one long-term goal in mind.
So have you always been quite analytical, enjoy numbers?
Yeah, very much so, and that's how I approach a lot of day-to-day life, really. I can be quite OCD, and yeah, good with numbers and statistics and those kind of things. And yeah, we applied quite a bit of that to our sort of daily routine.
Few come in from Thomas Fay, so thank you for that. And he said, your horses are always very fit, very professional on the track. What do you do with them at home to ensure that?
Well, I guess there's two elements to that. In terms of being professional, I would hope that a large part of that is down to the fact that we would break probably 85% of them ourselves. I know a lot of trainers now outsource the early sort of education of yearlings and 2-year-olds to pre-trainers, but the vast majority of our yearlings come straight from the sales into us, and we have a very particular methodical process that they have to go through in terms of taking them from the horse that arrives that's never had a saddle on its back to being ridden away. And like I say, we are very particular about that process. We even have each horse has a breaking file, and there's a step-by-step process that the people that are doing the breaking with the horses have to go through, and you can't move on to step 5 until the horse is foot perfect at step 4.
Sure.
And you know, taking that extra bit of time and effort right at the very beginning of a horse's career, I hope, is what makes them so good in terms of, you know, next to no stalls problems, very few horses are keen in their races. So that side of things, and being very methodical in the early stages of a horse's career, I think can make them a lot easier to deal with further down the line. And in terms of fitness, yeah, as we're always quite open about saying, we feed them hard and work them hard. And you know, we're not, some trainers look to perhaps peak horses towards races and then let them sort of drop off a bit afterwards and let them down essentially, and then peak them again. Our horses are in full work from January the 1st until the November handicap, a lot of them. And yeah, they work hard, but they're very fit as a result.
I'm interested to see how concise you can be with this one, and you're going to understand why. It's from Hannah Gibbs, and she's asked, what's it like working with family, which is obviously a good point, but what have you learned from your father, Mark? I mean, is that how long's a piece of string? Because I can imagine there must be so many different factors and parts of your day-to-day life that obviously you've watched on over the years of what your father does and joined in, tried to emulate, adapt. There must be so many different parts to this.
There is, but I think a lot of it comes down to one thing, and that is just his general attitude, basically. There's so many things that I see him pull people up on, essentially, that other people will just turn a blind eye to. He's just such a stickler for attention to detail, for everything being done his way, his way or the highway. And just, right to walking around the yard and just places not being tidy and the general upkeep of the yard. He's always saying to our yard managers, walk around with your eyes open. View the yard every night as you're doing evening stables, as if you're Sheikh Mohammed coming in to see the horses. You want to showcase the yard at every moment you can, and having that just real drive and determination for perfection is something that there's so often I look and I think, well, just other people would just turn a blind eye to that, but he wants everything done correctly and done his way.
Welcome back to our chat with Charlie Johnston, a kind Q&A session. Your questions have come in. Charlie's kindly answering them. Andy Stevens, he's asked, who is this year's King's Advice, Charlie? And what's the latest on Living Legend?
Well, I don't think we could think we'll have a King's Advice every 10 years, never mind have one every year. It still beggars belief what that horse was able to achieve last year. I remember as if it was yesterday. I was lucky enough to I was away on a stag do actually at the beginning of March last year, and sat down at the laptop to watch him win at Lingfield for the first time of 71. And if anyone had told me we'd be at Glorious Goodwoods 4 months down the line winning off 106, I just laughed at them. So yeah, there's I would be very surprised if there's another one that's going to raise 3 stone. But I'm sure there's quite a lot of nice horses that didn't have a huge amount of racing at the back end and are sure to improve for stepping up and trip. A couple that spring to mind would be horses like Trumpet Man and possibly Bondi Sands, both horses that had 3 runs in sort of mile and a quarter maidens at the back end, but I think will make up into nice middle distance handicappers this year.
And what's the latest on Living Legend was the next one?
Living Legend, yeah, he actually sadly got injured just after he ran at Chester, would have been the first week in May. He got injured, and he has spent most of the last 6 months out in the paddock. And I was actually just on the phone to his owner, Barbara Richmond, this morning, and he's coming back to us on Wednesday. I would have a guarded prognosis for getting him back to full fitness on a racetrack after the injury he's had, but obviously a very talented horse, so one that we're going to give every chance to try and get back.
You're always going to have to get back to this music bit as well. The final part of the question is, who do you reckon will break off and do the solo bit first, your mum or your brother?
Well, to be fair, my brother actually does this professionally.
Yeah.
So he, until about 2 weeks ago, he was working in a very well-known après ski bar in the Alps called the Folie Douce,
right?
Which is probably the biggest party bar in the Alps. They have a chain of 4 different bars dotted about. So he was a singer and performer for the winter. He does this every winter. So he was in Val d'Isère until about only 2 weeks ago, I think. The Saturday after Cheltenham, it was just when the whole coronavirus sort of epidemic was really kicking in, and they shut down overnight, and that was him out of a job. So that's why he's back home at the moment. Normally through the summer he does a lot of weddings and parties and gigs through the summer, and obviously all that is completely gone down the drain for the next couple of months. So yeah, he's very much at a loose end at the moment, and that's why you're seeing the singing that you are.
Well, I think a lot of people are really enjoying, if he's at a loose end, doing what him and your mother Deirdre have been doing as well, been fantastic. Adam Ward, when you've multiple, back to horse racing, of course, this one, when you've multiple runners around the country, do you get to choose which race meeting you want to go to, or do you get told where to attend with a certain horse?
We basically, obviously, Saturdays are, in particular, hugely busy days for us. Quite common to have runners at 5 or 6 meetings.
Yep.
We would normally sit down on either Thursday lunchtime or Friday first thing, after decks have been done, after the fields have come out, and most importantly, after we get our office staff to speak to all the owners and tell us which owners are likely to attend.
Yeah.
So probably even more so than the perhaps prestige or value of the races, the order of importance for us for race meetings on a Saturday is which meetings most owners are going to go to. And obviously there's certain owners that Dad will deal with more, that I will deal with more, or perhaps that Mum will deal with. So we basically, if owners are going, one of Mum, Dad, myself or Jock will be in attendance, and depending on who that is and where they're going, we will cover those meetings between us. So it can, and it's a funny one that I always love it how, well, sometimes the media, when they're covering a meeting, or the general public, they think a trainer's turned up today, so the 2-year-old must have wings. It's so far from the truth, and the owner would dictate a lot more when we're going racing rather than the horse and its ability.
Yeah, I remember seeing you at Newmarket July course last June, Visionari. I think I only saw you half an hour after he'd won on debut at 10-1. I didn't see the half an hour before, unfortunately. It does work out that way.
His owner was in Australia, so I definitely wasn't there because of that. But it was a good day.
Now, Callum Medell, he said, I thought it was quite an interesting question, this one. Any horse in particular in the yards over the years that you feel would have been high class on the track but never got to show it because perhaps the career was curtailed by injury?
Oh, wow. I'm trying to think. That's a tricky one. There aren't too many horses, thankfully, that spring to mind in that bracket, which I guess is a testament to
yes,
to our methods and our vets at home, that we haven't. And I guess you clearly, judged by my memory, you forget those ones a lot quicker than you remember the ones that do it on the track.
the right way round, isn't it, really?
Exactly. No, I'm sure there are plenty, but there's nothing leaping out at me that I think it was a travesty that we never got that to the track.
Oh, good stuff. Well, look, Catherine Allen, the Last Lion, that brilliant horse 2-year-old from a few years ago, won the Brocklesby at Doncaster and then the Middle Park in September, which is obviously a great training performance. Out of your current 2-year-olds, do you think you could have another Last Lion? Well, they're all blank canvases, aren't they, at the moment?
They are, yeah. And obviously, sadly, there will be no Brocklesby winner this year to try that. But yeah, the Last Lion is a fantastic horse, and one that we're very proud of, because it says a huge amount about us and about how we operate as a team and as a yard, in that we're not afraid to run good horses early. He won the Brocklesby, like I say, at the start of the season. Buratino won on the first day of the year before that, and went on to win the Coventry. So I don't, this sort of this kind of theorem that you run your cheap, sharp little sort of moderate stallion, 2-year-old early doors in the Brocklesby. It just once our kind of makeup of the yard changed a bit a few years ago, in that we became quite 2-year-old orientated. We had about 50% of our string now would be 2-year-olds, and we felt we had to prove a point and hit the ground running with the 2-year-olds. And this methodology of running those in your B division early on went out the window, and we thought, if it's working well and it's galloping well, then let's run it regardless of what it's by or how much it costs. This year, if the Brocklesby had run, our most expensive yearling was in the mix to be running in it, because he was just working that well at the moment, and we're not afraid of running those kind of horses early if they're showing the right signs. And his durability through the year got scrutinised a huge amount. Yes, he ran 10 times, but as Dad has been quoted 100 times in interviews since, we can honestly say that from the week before the Brocklesby, the horse did not gallop again until the middle back. He had 10 gallops, and they were all on racecourses at 3-week intervals, from the last Saturday in March to the last Saturday in September.
It didn't stop him winning a Group 1, did it?
Exactly. And another 2-year-old that won the Middle Park might only have run 3 times during the year, but you can guarantee it probably had 15 gallops at home. So that's what we always sort of reference, in that we like to do our galloping on the track rather than at home.
That leads perfectly on to the next one, because a horse that we see so frequently, and certainly seen so frequently over the last few years. Ali has said, how's the legend that is Massam Star?
Well, to be honest, I did a similar sort of thing to this for another media outlet just last week, and I think I'll use the same quote again, in that it would take more than a global pandemic to stop Massam Star. He's still in great order, and probably just frustrated more than anyone that he's not been racing for probably the longest in the last 5 years. It's been that he's not been to a track. So
he's going to be very fresh, isn't he?
You can guarantee that the first meeting that comes around, he'll have an entry.
So we'll look forward to that. Jamie Lazel, one of the high-class horses in the last few years, he said, what's the latest on Elarcam? He looks an unlucky loser in the Juddmonte International. Did anything come to light after the lesser run in the Irish Champion?
Nothing particularly sinister physically after Ireland, and there's maybe a niggling doubt. I'm not sure if it's anything I would hang my hat on, but twice he has travelled abroad, he has put in substandard efforts.
That was to the Guineas in Ireland as well, wasn't it?
Exactly. The year before we went there, quite hopeful for the Irish Guineas, and he ran below par. He does seem to save his best for York. I think his 2 standout performances, the Sky Bet York Stakes last year and the Juddmonte, were both over that course and distance. So he's wintered very well. I actually just spoke to Angus Golden on Saturday, because he had his first leg stretch up the grass on Saturday, and seems in really good order with himself. And obviously we're all a bit sort of guessing as to what the programme is going to look like, but those 2 races again would be obvious targets for him, and not impossible that he would maybe step up to 1.5 miles at some point this year. That's something that we've had in the back of our minds for a while.
Yeah, that has been suggested. Last few, I promise you that one. I'll just keep one here from Sean Slack, and the team at Racing TV have come up with a few just about you, if you don't mind. But Sean said, just a 2-year-old to follow. Is there a named horse at this moment, or a pedigree that you're particularly looking at, that we can particularly look out for over the next few months? Fingers crossed.
Thankfully, there's plenty to choose from, to be honest. I think, exciting. It's funny, I was just reading this morning, another quite high-profile trainer had done a stable tour, and he was talking about this bunch of 2-year-olds being the best bunch ever. And I always sort of wonder whether that's a bit of a cliche that trainers like to use, because, realistically, we've bought the same number of 2-year-olds. They've come at a similar kind of price bracket, from similar sources and from similar owner breeders. And realistically, every crop is going to be, as I'm sure James Willoughby would confirm for us, statistically they're going to be similar to last year, especially with these sort of numbers. You just hope that your average rating this year might be 76 rather than 75.
Yeah.
And rather than have one or two outliers that are group horses, you have 4 or 5 outliers that are group horses. But I do think we had some good buys at the yearling sales. Probably bought more horses in the 6-figure bracket than we might do normally. I am waffling away from getting pinned down on it. But,
I was going to say as well, with the cliche, Charlie, we're not going to see in the Racing Post one day Charlie Johnston says this is the worst bunch of 2-year-olds we've ever had. It doesn't work like that, does it?
Like you say, the difference between the average rating of one bunch from last year's bunch will be a pound or two. You're not going to have a bunch one year that have an average rating of 65, and your group next year are going to have an average rating of 85.
Yeah.
Providing that in most cases they'll all come from a similar source. They'll be bought by the same people for the same kind of figures. There'll always be a degree of consistency in what you have. In terms of picking just the name, there's a lot to choose from, I can assure you that. So the chances of picking the right one are probably slim. But I will go for a Lawman colt called March Law. A half brother to Frankus.
Nice.
A few years ago. And you would expect him to be a 7-furlong 2-year-old, but he is showing a bit more in April than you'd expect of a horse with his pedigree.
You top man, Charlie. I'm going to ask you last couple, just one word answers or however you want to see this. Ideal night out or night in? What do you like to do when you're away from it all?
To be honest, and that's another thing that I've lost hugely from coronavirus.
Yeah.
The only time I get away from racing is playing rugby.
Yeah.
I love rugby, and I still, from November handicap weekend until Brocklesby weekend, I play rugby every Saturday. And down my local clubhouse, which is only a mile and a half from here, having played rugby on a Saturday afternoon, having 1, 2, 10 pints. That's my perfect relaxation away from racing.
How about, obviously, look, these are all counterfactual at the moment. Night out is, of course, night in at the moment. But one day, dream holiday? Tie it in with a bit of racing or not?
Well, that's it. Every time I go abroad, it does seem to. Racing is always interlinked in some way. You never seem to be able to get away from it. Again, on a rugby theme, I was very fortunate to go to Japan in October for the World Cup, which was a phenomenal trip. But in terms of crack with your mates, a skiing holiday is always tough to beat. It's been a few years since I've been in one of those, so I wouldn't mind another one sooner rather than later. And
lastly, for you personally, your ideal dinner guests, who would they be?
Ideal dinner guests? Oh gosh, I don't know about the individuals. There'd have to be someone funny there to make me laugh. So I don't know, someone like a Kevin Bridges. Crack. There would have to be, I don't know, I'll just pick racing people, which is so sad and pathetic.
Okay, which racing people then? Which racing people? If you had to pick a couple.
I have, as a youngster, when I was at uni, my bedroom wall was just covered in pictures of AP McCoy, because I just thought he was just the most phenomenal sportsman in terms of his drive and determination.
Yeah.
And in terms of when I sit at home and watch racing, I love listening to Ted Walsh. And when you can't listen to Ted Walsh, you listen to Ruby Walsh. I think they're both fantastic to listen to. And I guess in terms of other people in sport that I really respect, someone like a Johnny Wilkinson. I always love watching the replay of before the European Cup final when he was at Toulon, and he did half of it as captain. He did half of his pre-match speech in English and then half in French, because of the multinational people in the team. And he just as a leader and as a sportsman, I just think he's a pretty phenomenal character.
Charlie, thank you. You've learnt a lot there. I know you're busy, so thank you very much. Best of luck to you and the team, and of course the family. Stay safe, and we'll look forward to seeing the record-breaking Johnston runners back out on the track as soon as possible, as soon as we can get back.
Yeah, looking forward to it. Raring to go.
Top man. Charlie, thank you very much.
Thanks.